You've been served. That was the first sentence out of her mouth as she dropped the envelope on my keyboard, right on top of the function keys. Like some smug punctuation mark on a marriage she was already rewriting. No preamble, no warning, not even a twitch of guilt in her voice. Just those 3 words, delivered with the sterile professionalism of a corporate memo. The office had just emptied. My team, loyal, brilliant, oblivious, was downstairs celebrating the rollout of our new client security module. She hadn't RSVP'd. She stood there, arms crossed in that blazer she always wore when she wanted to look like a CEO, even though she'd never written a line of code or stayed past 7 p.m. She didn't have to. She had charm, polish, the right pedigree for boardrooms. She married the rest. You built the machine, she used to say, but I'm the one who made people take it seriously. At first, that line amused me. Then it dulled. Then, it became the backdrop to every conversation she had about our company. At networking events, I was the strange husband who worked in the back rooms, as she liked to put it. People started assuming I was some CTO for hire she kept around for legacy systems. Sometimes I played into it, smiling just enough, letting the narrative stick. It gave me space. But now she wanted the whole thing. I'm entitled to half, she said, as if the words tasted better than they sounded. You'll be transparent with the financials. I brought someone. She stepped aside, and in walked a man who looked like he stepped out of a tax audit fantasy. Expensive glasses, navy wool suit, crisp leather folio. He introduced himself politely, but didn't wait for an answer before plugging into the admin terminal. We just need access to the internal server and full logs, she said sweetly, pulling out her chair. Nothing personal. I didn't say much. I watched her instead. She thought this was the moment I'd flinch, maybe puff out my chest and bark about trade secrets. But I just reached into the drawer, pulled out the encrypted login token, and slid it toward her accountant. Take your time, I said. Really, go slow. And he did. The man barely looked up for the first hour. Just clicked and typed, head slightly tilted as he sifted through years of builds, deployments, tax entries, payment records. Everything gleamed, suspiciously clean. That's when I noticed it. The slight arch of his brow, the soft huff of his breath. He was confused. Not because something was missing. Because it was all there, too neatly. Everything accounted for, everything categorized, everything auditable down to the minute. It was almost as if someone had expected him. Funny thing about being underestimated for years. It gives you room to prepare. I wasn't building just software. I was building proof. Patterns. Logs. Mirrors. And I kept them off the grid. No cloud. No physical paper trail. Only encrypted backups on rotating drives, tied to keystroke loggers I'd written myself. Nothing illegal. Just vigilant. You'd be surprised how many private documents get copied on shared machines when no one thinks you're watching. Or how many remote syncs forget to unlink after a password reset. Or how many backup configurations get duplicated by mistake. Especially when the person setting them up thinks she's the only one clever enough to cover her tracks. I'd been quiet for too long, and that was fine by me. People don't take shadows seriously until they move. And listen, since you're already this far in, consider subscribing. You wouldn't believe how many people listen without hitting that little button. And yeah, it actually keeps the whole operation going. Every click keeps us fueled to bring more like this. No pressure. Just think about it. Anyway, back to her accountant. He was sweating now. Not visibly, not enough for her to notice, but his hand hovered just a beat too long above the keyboard before he clicked into the next file tree. I leaned back. She was talking to someone on speaker, probably her lawyer, laughing too loudly about something petty. She didn't see the moment he stopped scrolling. A folder had caught his attention. It wasn't mine. I never named folders like that. It was labeled in her style. Camel case, tagged with project identifiers only she used, tied to dates I remembered clearly. Like the night she told me she was working late at the incubator, but the conference room camera showed otherwise. I hadn't said anything then. I just archived it. Timestamped, categorized, and mirrored. The real audit wasn't of my books. It was of hers. It started with that fake laugh she used when she was lying in front of people too dumb to catch it. We were at a brunch in Old Town, one of those sunlit, overpriced places with organic air and $19 mimosas. She had her hand on her friend Lauren's wrist, smiling with just the right tilt of her head, pretending to confide in the way bored predators do. I mean, he's not stupid, just sneaky, she whispered, like she was unveiling some charming little flaw in her husband. I know there's more. Crypto, side contracts, consulting gigs he doesn't report. He plays the quiet genius card, but I know him. Lauren did the fake gasp. Her other friend, Elise, leaned in, wide-eyed and ready for gossip. And her third friend, no idea what her name was, just muttered, "Well, you'll find it. You always do." She grinned like a cat already licking its chops. "Oh, I already know who I'm sending in. The accountant. Gregory something. I remembered him from 2 Christmas parties ago. He gave me a 'so what do you do, really?' look while sipping scotch I paid for." At the time, I just smiled and said I handled back-end architecture and compliance. He lost interest after compliance. What none of them at that brunch knew, what she didn't know, was that I'd already been watching her movements for months. I don't mean peeking at her phone or going through drawers like some desperate husband playing detective. That's amateur hour. She gave me her tells a long time ago. It started subtle, flash drives left out but always freshly wiped, odd print logs from our home office when she claimed she hadn't touched the printer in weeks. Once, a set of contracts disappeared from our shared folder, but the checksum values didn't match the last sync. The file hadn't been deleted, just copied. Quietly, I started logging device activity on the home network, something any decent engineer can set up in under an hour. Every laptop, tablet, even her just for recipes iPad mini got its own passive monitor. I didn't dig through her stuff. I didn't need to. I just mirrored and watched. Midnight transfers to a blank flash drive. Always the same model, always reformatted before use. 2 weeks later, she asked me, over pasta, whether we should start using a shared financial planner. "Wouldn't it be smart," she said, twirling linguine like a sorceress with a fork, "just to get ahead of things before next tax season? We've got a lot of moving pieces." I nodded. "Sure, whatever you think is best." And that's when I knew she was getting ready to flip the board. Not yet, but soon. She thought she was being strategic. Slow. Subtle. She thought she had time to move her pieces into place before the conflict phase. That's what she once called it after some leadership webinar. Every disruption has a conflict phase. Best to get ahead of it. So I let her. I let her do her little midnight copies. I let her have her brunches with the Lawrence Circle. I even let her accidentally leave that envelope half visible in her purse, the one with her initials on legal letterhead from a boutique firm in Georgetown. She assumed I'd panic, that I'd scramble to cover whatever phantom accounts she'd invented in her head. She didn't understand. There was nothing to cover. But there was plenty to show. The only reason she was convinced I had something to hide was because she did. Projected guilt is a funny thing, especially in marriages where one person thinks they've outgrown the other. She'd spent so long thinking she was the strategic one, the mastermind behind our social presence, the architect of our joint narrative. And maybe that was true in public. But tech isn't public. Tech is private. Data is silent until someone knows how to make it sing. 3 months before she walked her accountant into my server room, I'd already cataloged 17 instances of unauthorized file duplication, 11 PDF exports from secure folders, and 6 separate times she used a printer at 2 a.m. to print grocery lists that were exactly 32 pages long and used 12-point Arial with footers. Who prints groceries in Arial? And then came the best part. One night, she slipped up. She thought I was asleep in my office after another 18-hour sprint. She tiptoed in, plugged in her drive, and copied a folder labeled Tax Projections, 2016 to 2021. Except it wasn't that folder. It was a honeypot. The moment she opened it, an invisible script captured everything: her device ID, timestamp, and IP. It mirrored the entire sequence to an external server and tagged the file as compromised evidence A. I didn't say a word. I let her think she was winning. She spent the next weeks smirking to herself in the mirror, thinking she was 5 moves ahead. Meanwhile, every keystroke became another breadcrumb in the trail she thought she was following. She didn't realize the trail was built by me, and it didn't lead to treasure. It led to a trap. He arrived 40 minutes early, the way men do when they think punctuality is part of their identity. Gray suit, polished shoes, a matte black laptop bag that probably cost more than the first version of my company's firewall system. He introduced himself as Mr. Langston, but I already knew him. Not personally, but I knew the type. The voice was calculated warm, like a pre-recorded podcast ad. Firm handshake, dead eyes. The kind of man people hire when they want to feel safe, but don't want to ask the scary questions themselves. She lit up when she saw him, like a wedding planner spotting her favorite florist. "Greg," she beamed, touching his arm just a little too long. "Thank you for coming early. I want this done before lunch. Just find everything." He's not walking out of this with a single penny hidden. Langston gave me a nod, the kind you give the guy being audited by your client. He didn't wait for me to speak. Just walked over to the guest terminal I had set up, pulled out a USB key, and started booting up his encrypted toolkit. His hands moved confidently, fast, like he'd done this 100 times before and didn't expect anything new. I had cleared the space for him. I wanted him comfortable. The access token I gave him unlocked the full financial database, every record from day one. Contracts, vendor payouts, tax filings, invoice chains, even the shell logs from back-end testing. No passwords needed. It was all served to him on a platter. He started with the basics. Profit/loss statements, cross-reference tax forms, vendor invoices, payment ledgers. A few eyebrow raises here and there, but no gasps, no interruptions. Just the subtle hum of a professional being lulled into a sense of superiority. I leaned back, watching. She stood over him at first, arms crossed, scanning his screen like she understood any of the tools he was using. But eventually, the silence unnerved her, and she left the room under the pretense of checking on some legal docs. In reality, she just didn't like silence when it wasn't hers. Langston didn't speak. He didn't have to. His fingers did. They hovered a little longer now, double-checking folder names, running checksum comparisons. A quiet hum escaped him around the 90-minute mark. That's when he opened the server backup logs. These were old, daily, incremental backups from the last 730 days, indexed, timestamped, and automatically hashed to verify integrity. He skimmed through the logs, paused, scrolled back, paused again. One line caught him off guard. June 18th, 2:13 a.m. Server mirror executed. Directory/home/shared/uploads/temp/archive, MTH4. He pulled up the corresponding directory on the active server. Nothing there. He pulled up the mirror. Not empty. He leaned in. Inside were XML logs, image thumbnails, spreadsheet snapshots, systematic captures of user-level file movements. And that's when the first fracture of doubt crawled across his face. Not because the data was damning, but because it shouldn't exist. No forensic accountant likes ghosts. And this was a ghost folder, something built to be invisible to anyone not looking for it. But there it was, fully timestamped, fully intact. He clicked into a folder marked Archived Correspondence. Then another, Transfer Logs, Non-System Events. The deeper he dug, the quieter he got. A half hour passed. Then another. She came back in, holding her phone like a sword, ready to ask if he had everything he needed. He didn't even look up. "There's nothing missing," he said flatly. "But," she squinted. "But," he didn't answer right away. Just kept scrolling, toggling views, cross-checking logs. He was in that place, where professionals pretend they're thinking deeply to mask the fact that something just made them nervous. "There's no fraud," he muttered. "No embezzlement. No suspicious routing. No ghost clients. No crypto." She blinked. "So? That's good, right?" He turned slowly to look at her. "It's too clean." She laughed. "He's obsessive. That's how he hides things." Langston didn't smile. "No," he said. "This level of cleanliness isn't a cover. It's a design. Everything has a mirrored footprint. Every file movement. Every version. Even deletions are cataloged and hash verified." He tapped the screen. "This server doesn't look like it's been used by someone hiding money." Her jaw tightened. "So he's smarter than you thought." Langston tilted his head. "Or someone else was sloppy." That landed hard. She glanced at the monitor, then at me. I was still leaning back, arms folded, silent. That's when Langston clicked into a JSON file. His eyes narrowed. I didn't need to see it. I knew what was in there. But she didn't. She assumed this whole operation was about me. She never once considered that, by dragging him in with full admin rights and legal clearance, she'd invited someone to read her tracks too. Langston's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. He clicked on the next folder. It was labeled in her naming format. Not mine. And suddenly, I saw it, the crack, the twitch in her expression. Not panic. Not yet. Just the tiniest flicker of recognition. The kind that only comes when someone realizes, too late, that their past just walked back into the room. Langston leaned forward, elbows now resting on the desk instead of his usual perfect posture. That alone said enough. The man had gone from performing an audit to decoding a crime scene. The folder was simple. Titled Mirror. No gimmicks, no passwords, no misdirection. Just mirror. Like it was daring him to look. He hovered over it with the mouse for a moment too long, like a man cracking a sealed envelope meant for someone else, and double-clicked. It opened instantly. Inside, a stack of nested folders that mirrored the shared cloud drives linked to the company. Admin, finance_archive, shared_partners, PR_templates. Q4 underscore presentation underscore decks. Everything in its place, down to the misleading subfolders she thought would bury her tracks. The ones she named things like home budget and insurance PDFs to make it look boring, civilian, harmless. Langston scrolled, then paused. There it was, a folder titled Transfers, Unscheduled/Device, MTH4. He clicked. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the folder populated. Dozens, no, hundreds, of screenshots, each perfectly time-stamped. Clear captures of a screen mid-task. Some were innocuous. Her calendar, her email drafts, internal memos. But others, not so much. The first screenshot showed her logged into a banking interface. Her name, clearly visible in the upper right corner. She was reviewing a wire transfer in the 5-digit range. Destination, an offshore account in Belize. The memo line read Consult Alt, JS/New York. Langston squinted. Opened the next image. Another transfer. Different account. This time to a shell corp in Nevada. Then another. Then one to a marketing contractor listed under a completely unrelated entity. All from her personal account. All timestamped during odd hours. 2:14 a.m., 3:03 a.m., one even at 4:41 a.m. on Christmas morning. He clicked into a subfolder titled Drafts, Unsent. Dozens of saved Outlook drafts, each unsent. Some were to lawyers, some to vendors, but most were to herself. Notes, reminders, the kind you never think will be read. One stood out. Need to clean logs before Langston starts. Langston's jaw tightened. He blinked slowly, lips pressed together, and for the first time, his fingers stopped moving. The man known for velocity and confidence had gone still. He looked over his shoulder toward the glass office door. She wasn't there. He leaned in again. One more file. Alt_personal.xlsx. He opened it. A spreadsheet. Simple layout. 5 columns. Date. Amount. Destination. Sender IP. Approval device. The first entry was from 2 years ago. Every row was a transfer. Every transfer traced back to her. But something else caught his eye. A 6th, hidden column. He unhid it. Witnessed by. The first few entries were blank. Then names started appearing. He recognized 2 of them. Her sister. Her mother. Another. An old friend from university, now listed as trustee on one of the shell core. Each one with a corresponding IP, a log entry, a digital fingerprint that tied them to the action. And it hit him. This wasn't just a mirror of company data. This was a mirror of her. Langston rubbed the bridge of his nose. Now he had 2 problems. First, verifying the authenticity of the files before confronting her. Because if even a shred of this was faked, his entire professional reputation would be at risk. Second, understanding why any of it had been left there in the first place. He scrolled back to the root folder. There, sitting innocently at the top, was a single text file. Read_Greg.txt. He opened it. Inside, one line. I assume you're thorough. Keep going. He leaned back slowly. This wasn't accidental. Someone had known exactly what he'd search for, what tools he'd use, what he'd click first. Langston wasn't auditing anymore. He was participating in something much larger, much colder than divorce. He looked at the screen again, then turned and stared through the glass wall at her, laughing on a call with someone, no doubt already spinning the tale that the audit was going brilliantly. He tapped the screen once with the tip of his finger. Then, finally, under his breath, he muttered, "Who are you married to?" "Ma'am, can I ask, who else had your admin password?" Greg Langston's voice cut through the air like an unexpected thunderclap. Calm, measured, but edged with something far sharper, doubt. She froze mid-laugh, the phone still warm in her hand. Her smile snapped off like a bad switch. The room, which had seconds before been full of her self-satisfied gloating, dropped into silence. She blinked. What? Langston didn't repeat himself. He just turned the screen toward her with a single practiced motion, fingers still resting lightly on the edge of the keyboard. A forensic man's poker face, flat, unreadable, but his eyes were locked onto hers now. He tapped the top window. "These aren't his files," he said. "They're yours." She moved toward the table slowly, like she was approaching a sleeping dog she'd just kicked awake. "Excuse me," she said, voice brittle. Langston pulled up the metadata tab on the screen. She wasn't technical, never had been, but even she could recognize the tags flashing back at her. Created by MTH4. Source IP 192.168.0.17. User s.r_admin. Print job logs 3:04 a.m., 3:29 a.m., 3:46 a.m. Email draft folder. Linked account. sr.rich@privateofaltmail.com. It took her a second to process what she was seeing. Then she laughed, dry, shaky, like the sound a wine glass makes right before it cracks. No, no, that's impossible, she said. He must have planted those. Manipulated the timestamps. He's capable of that. You said he was thorough. Langston didn't flinch. Manipulating log integrity across mirrored backups stored on separate air-gapped systems would take full system root access. And from what I've seen, he never had it. He turned the monitor back toward himself and opened another file. This folder contains screen captures taken from your laptop during remote sessions. Sessions authenticated with your fingerprint ID, routed through your home network, and paired with your printer logs. All of it cross-referenced against the timestamps of physical print jobs initiated from your device. He looked back up at her. It's not his server that's suspicious. It's your devices. She stumbled back half a step, catching herself against the table's edge. I don't. Maybe someone cloned my system or got access through a bug or... Ma'am, Langston interrupted gently. That's not how this works. He opened the file tree and scrolled. Each folder bore her digital signature. Financial spreadsheets, correspondence, unsent drafts, wire transfer confirmations. A roadmap, not to his deception, but to hers. She swallowed hard. No one else had the password, she whispered. Langston tilted his head. Then that makes this worse. She tried to recover, straightening up. He must have keylogged me. Or installed spyware. You said he wrote custom software. Maybe he built something. That's possible, Langston nodded. But if that were the case, we'd see remote injection logs, protocol-level mismatches, anomalies in the runtime environment. So far, nothing. This is clean, ma'am. Too clean. That last part lingered like a bad perfume. Clean didn't mean safe anymore. It meant intentional. She backed away, arms folded now, but not in control, defensive. Her chest rose faster. She looked toward the door, as if trying to calculate whether leaving now would look too much like running. She glanced at Langston again, eyes darting to the files on screen. She whispered, "Delete them." Langston's face went blank. "Excuse me." She stepped forward. "Just get rid of them. You've confirmed there's nothing missing from his side. This isn't what I hired you for." Langston stared at her like a surgeon being asked to bury the scalpel mid-operation. "You want me to destroy evidence." "It's not evidence," she snapped. "It's garbage. Out-of-context screenshots. Old drafts. My data. I never gave consent to store this stuff." "You did," he said calmly. "The minute you gave me full access with a signed release." She went pale. "You said find everything," he added, closing the folder with a slow tap. "Well, I found it." She sat down hard in the chair across from him. The confidence was gone now, leaking out of her like air from a slashed tire. Langston stood, unplugging the encrypted USB drive from the terminal. "I'm going to step outside," he said. "Give you a moment. But I have to finish the audit." "And if you do?" she asked. His voice was quiet, but steel-threaded. "Then your lawyer's going to have a very different conversation than you planned." Then he walked out. She sat there, alone with the screen still aglow in front of her. Her reflection stared back, caught in the act by her own shadow. She practically sprinted into the hallway the second Langston left the room. The glass door didn't slam. She had enough public composure for that, but it hissed shut just fast enough to betray her urgency. Through the frosted panel, I watched her pace. Phone pressed to her ear, free hand shaking slightly. Her mouth moved fast, each syllable tight and frantic. No more of the polished charm, no curated confidence. Just pure damage control, unraveling in real time. "No, I don't know how he got it. Greg says it's my data." Pause. "I'm telling you it's a setup. A trap. But it's backed up, Steve. He mirrored everything. It's all me." Another pause. Then her voice dropped to a hiss. "Then we need to clean this now? I don't care how. You said this couldn't be traced back." She caught herself mid-sentence and glanced at the door, realizing too late that glass doesn't muffle. Meanwhile, Langston hadn't stopped. Back at the terminal, he was moving slower now. Not because he was tired, but because he knew where this was going. The audit was no longer about verification. This was excavation. He opened a folder marked Archive, Legal. Inside, a single spreadsheet caught his attention. Contingency S.XLSX. He clicked. It opened without password protection, because of course it did. People only protect files they think someone else might find. She had never expected this to be reviewed under hostile eyes. Langston's face didn't change, but I noticed the slight shift in his breathing. His chest rose once, held, then lowered. Rows upon rows of data. Bank accounts, routing numbers, currency types. Each entry paired with a transaction date and a short, chilling description. Transfer, mother, ZRH, 72,000 US dollars. Transfer, sister, M, rich, education cover, 40,500 US dollars. Shell Corp management fee, via proxy, 125,000 US dollars. Langston's cursor hovered. The spreadsheet had embedded comments, notes she'd left for herself. Each one made the heat in the room drop a little more. ZRH equals Zurich. Use mother's maiden name on file. Keep below $75,000 for reporting threshold. Sister's account not technically linked. Must confirm. But the logins didn't lie. Every transfer request came from her IP addresses. Each session used her device fingerprint. Each confirmation email traced back to her private encrypted account, the one tied to her supposedly abandoned side business. Langston clicked into a second tab at the bottom of the sheet. Instructions, if flagged. It was a checklist. Deny knowledge. Claim access breach. Blame server misconfiguration. Invoke marital privilege. Threaten lawsuit stall. Each item had a checkmark beside it. And at the bottom, in red, bolded, Greg is smart, but not that smart. Langston exhaled slowly. Interesting, he muttered. He clicked into another subfolder. Draft notices. Legal templates. Termination letters. PR statements. Even a resignation email, not hers, but pre-written, meant for me. Effective immediately, I have decided to step back from day-to-day operations. It even had a forged signature block at the bottom, mimicking my email footer. Langston sat back in his chair for a long moment, as if processing not just the data but the intent behind it. This wasn't sloppy greed. This was an engineered collapse. A plan to bleed the company slowly, create the appearance of misconduct, then replace the troubled founder with a newly empowered leadership, hers. She didn't want half. She wanted all. And she didn't care who she used to get there. Outside, she was still yelling into the phone. Her voice cracked this time, a sound I hadn't heard from her since the early years, back when she still believed she could be caught. I don't care if they audit the trust. Tell Mom to deny it. She'll fold under pressure. Fold under pressure. A charming phrase, especially coming from someone who built an entire empire on calculated performance. The untouchable woman. The self-made force. The one who called me a relic in a hoodie. A footnote to her polished biography. Now, her entire posture screamed something else. Desperation. Not fear of exposure, but fear of irreversibility. Because deep down, even she understood, Langston wasn't her cleaner anymore. He was her witness. Greg Langston didn't waste time. As soon as he saw the third entry with her sister's name and a matching shell routing number from a flagged compliance list, he excused himself. Politely. Formally. Like a man calling for backup, but too professional to let it show. He stepped out into the hallway, opposite direction from where she was still pacing like a short-circuited metronome, and dialed. Hey, he said, when I picked up. Gregory, I answered, voice even. Everything all right? There was a beat of silence. Did you create the folder marked mirror? I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. I didn't have to, I said. She uploaded everything herself. He exhaled sharply, not a laugh. More like the breath of a man walking through a door he didn't realize had been open the whole time. I mirrored the server. I continued. That's all. No manipulation. No edits. No injections. I didn't touch her data. Just duplicated it. Langston's voice was lower now. How long? 2 years. Another pause. You mirrored everything. Everything tied to her credentials. I ran endpoint loggers, keystroke trackers, file movement audits, PDF fingerprinting. Anything linked to her device ID or her cloud tokens got archived. Encrypted backups every 72 hours. Stored offline. She never noticed? She was too busy being clever. Langston let that hang for a moment. You weren't hiding assets. No, I said simply. I was documenting hers. He didn't speak right away. Then, finally, why? That one sat in my throat for a second. I wanted to see how far she'd go. I could feel him processing that. Not judging. Just taking it in. The shift. The reframing. Because somewhere between the spreadsheet and the wire logs, Langston realized he'd walked into the wrong story. He wasn't tracing a man's deception anymore. He was cataloging a woman's overreach and discovering just how precisely her husband had designed her fall. Langston cleared his throat. I've never seen this level of system hygiene. I built the architecture for national security prototypes, Greg. She thought she was raiding a lemonade stand. She never stopped to wonder what the lemonade stand was attached to. There was silence on the line. The good kind. The kind where someone reconfigures everything they thought they knew about who they were working for. I've been doing this 19 years, he said finally. I've never seen an audit pivot like this. Then consider it a gift, I said. You wanted everything. You got everything. Langston didn't laugh. But I heard something crack in him. A quiet respect, maybe. Or just the eerie stillness of a man staring into a mirror and realizing the reflection was watching back. He ended the call with one last question. What do you want me to do? I didn't hesitate. Finish the audit. When he walked back into the office, she was mid-sentence, whispering urgently into her phone, back turned to the door. He didn't interrupt. He sat, opened the next folder, and kept digging. He arrived exactly how you'd expect a high-priced, self-important attorney to enter a room. Storm first, logic second. The conference room door flew open so hard the glass trembled in its frame. He didn't knock, didn't pause, just strode in like a man summoned to clean up someone else's mess while pretending it wasn't already smeared across every wall. Cease this unauthorized access immediately, he barked, voice slicing through the air like a courtroom objection he practiced too often in front of the mirror. Langston didn't even flinch. Still seated, still calm, his laptop open, screen casting a cool glow over the printouts stacked neatly beside him. He took off his glasses, folded them with surgical precision, and looked up with the kind of serenity that only comes from knowing you're about to win. Unauthorized, he repeated, voice mild. You're mistaken. The lawyer turned to her, waiting for the cue, the performative outrage, the finger-pointing that would justify this little crusade. She said nothing. Langston reached into his folio and pulled out a form, 2 pages, stapled top left. Clean signature at the bottom, highlighted initials on every paragraph. She signed off on full administrative access to the company's systems, including financial directories and archived logs. Here's the timestamp. Here's the consent clause. She even hand-wrote her initials next to the access waiver. In ink. Blue ink. The lawyer snatched the pages, eyes scanning quickly, looking for the technicality, the misstep, the thread he could pull. But there was nothing. Just her name, clear as day, in her own looping, decisive script. That same signature she once bragged about as her power flourish. He looked up, jaw already tightening. Did you authorize this level of access? She tried to speak. Failed. Langston didn't wait. He slid a second document across the table, a single printed page, covered in transaction logs. I thought you might be interested in this, he said. The lawyer read the top line, paused, read the next 3, then sighed loudly, not out of exasperation, but something closer to resignation, like a man who's just realized he stepped into a burning building with a plastic bucket. His eyes didn't leave the page. Did you know your name is on these? Her head jerked up. What? He turned the paper around, tapped the bottom section. Wire approvals. 2 of them. You co-signed as legal witness. Your signature, your notary seal, and, let me just check. Yes, your state bar ID number. She stared at him. That's from the trust account. From last year. Langston looked at her now, like a teacher addressing the slowest student in the room. Yes, he said. The one linked to a shell company registered in Wyoming, which, incidentally, happens to share a registered agent with 3 other entities, one owned by your mother, one by your sister, and one by you. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like someone had pulled a plug. The lawyer stepped back slightly, as if physical distance might immunize him from whatever legal fallout was now bubbling just under the surface. This isn't what we agreed on, she whispered. Langston didn't respond. He didn't need to. The room had turned. He was no longer the outsider, the hired hand. He was the authority now. You dragged me into this to prove he was hiding assets, Langston said, his voice level. But so far, the only one with inconsistencies is you. The lawyer turned toward her, eyes wide now with something that looked dangerously close to panic. You didn't disclose this to me, he said, more accusation than observation. I didn't think, she began, but her voice cracked halfway through. You didn't think, he repeated. Jesus, Sarah, you had me walk into this without a firewall. Langston stood and collected the documents into a neat stack. I'll be filing my report tonight, he said. I suggest you both review it carefully before taking any further legal action. Then he looked at me, through the glass, past the mess they'd made, and gave the slightest nod. The lawyer didn't speak again. She just stood there, a statue in heels, her empire of confidence crumbling silently at her feet. The condo was colder than she remembered, or maybe it was just her hands. She didn't bother turning on the lights, just tossed her keys somewhere in the direction of the marble bowl by the door and kicked off her heels without unbuckling them. Her phone buzzed against her hip. Again. Another email. Another ping. She'd silenced group chats hours ago. Even her lawyer had stopped replying. She dropped her bag and walked straight to the kitchen counter, where her laptop sat waiting, closed, pristine, untouched since that morning. She flipped it open with the kind of muscle memory you only build after years of orchestrating your world from behind glass. Her reflection flickered briefly on the screen before the desktop loaded. 2 notifications greeted her before anything else. Remote backup completed to Legal Vault, encrypted node, ext, 2197. Automated activity report sent to redacted at govsecure.us. She froze. Her eyes scanned the screen once, then twice. She clicked nothing, said nothing, just stared. The cursor blinked in the corner like a ticking bomb. Legal Vault? She'd never subscribed to anything called Legal Vault, and she sure as hell didn't authorize any activity report to go to a .gov domain. That was his infrastructure, his playground, his digital fortress dressed like a humble home office. She'd laughed at him once, told him no one cared about redundant security anymore. He never answered. Now, she was alone in her condo at 9:41 p.m., her reflection lit only by the cold glow of a betrayal she'd architected with her own hands. She clicked into the file explorer. The system was reorganized. New folder, _submitted_evidence. It wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. The lock wasn't technical, it was psychological. Inside, a digest of her recent activity. Timestamped. Categorized. Reviewed. Screenshots of that morning's call to Steve. Snippets of her desperate hallway phone conversation with her mother. Audio logs from the conference room mic, embedded in the system for quality assurance. She hadn't just lost the narrative. She was the narrative, and it had been uploaded, time-stamped, notarized, and encrypted before she'd even finished her latte. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone and dialed him. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Then the third time, the system skipped the ring entirely. She stared at the call-ended message for 3 long seconds, then opened messages and typed. "We need to talk." No response. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The silence grew teeth. She tried logging into her private email, the one she'd used for all the contingency planning. It was locked. Suspicious activity detected. Reset link has been sent to your recovery address. She didn't remember setting a recovery address. Her mouth dried. Desperate, she opened a browser and typed her name into the search bar. Nothing unusual at first. Old charity photos. LinkedIn. Some fluff piece from 5 years ago where she'd been called a rising voice in responsible tech governance. Then something new. A result tagged as sealed court filing, district jurisdiction, redacted. It wasn't clickable, just indexed. Meant to be invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for. She copied the docket number. Googled again. No results. But she knew that number. The prefix. It was civil. And sealed. Her stomach sank. She looked back at the laptop. The second notification still hovered in the corner like a final warning. Automated activity report sent to redacted.gov. She sat back, every window in the condo suddenly too large, every light too bright, too vulnerable. The walls weren't walls anymore. They were mirrors. Her reflection in the glass doors stared back with a kind of hollow dignity. Polished. Empty. She thought she'd weaponized silence. But she never understood the kind he mastered. He didn't scream. Didn't threaten. Didn't explode. He just recorded. And now she wasn't fighting him. She was fighting her own past, preserved, encrypted, and already in transit. Langston didn't say a word for over 5 minutes. He sat in front of the terminal, still, posture perfect, eyes fixed on the final spreadsheet that now refused to let him look away. Not because he didn't understand it, but because he did. Every line told the same story. Every timestamp, every routing number, every document version. It all coalesced into a single, undeniable narrative. She'd done this. She'd built it. She'd hidden it. And she'd signed for it with her own keystrokes, thinking she was the only one watching. But someone else had been watching. Her husband never hid a single dollar. He didn't need to. He'd spent the last 2 years quietly becoming the mirror she refused to look into. Langston exhaled, saved the final audit folder, and stood up. She was pacing again, this time inside the conference room, her heels making sharp, staccato clicks across the floor. Her face was pale now, makeup slightly smudged, jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscle twitch under her skin. When she heard the door open, she turned too fast. "Well," she snapped. "Did you find anything?" Langston didn't answer. He walked to the head of the table and placed a single manila folder down in front of her. Neatly labeled, initialed, dated. She didn't open it. He looked at her, calm as ever. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you might want to sit down." She scoffed. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm not one of your clients." Langston didn't move. "I'm not being dramatic." She stared at him for a beat too long. Then, slowly, and with deliberate contempt, she pulled the chair back and dropped into it. Her arms folded across her chest like she was bracing for turbulence. "Fine. What?" Langston opened the folder, turned the top sheet toward her. "I've finished the audit," he said. "Your husband's records are clean. There are no discrepancies. No unreported income. No concealed assets. No missing funds." She opened her mouth to argue, but he raised a finger, not rude, just final. "However," he continued, flipping to the second page, "we found 27 irregular transfers originating from your personal and shared accounts, totaling approximately $1.83 million, all routed through entities either owned by or connected to your immediate family. Some appear to have been labeled under fraudulent expense codes. Others list fictitious vendors." She stared at the document, but didn't read it. "I can explain those." Langston didn't blink. "You'll have to, but not to me." Then he handed her the last sheet. "Contingency S," he said, voice flat. Her face drained of the last remaining color. He tapped the bottom corner of the page. "It's digitally signed by you, auto-synced to your cloud storage, and the version history shows you edited it 2 days before you filed for divorce." She swallowed. "Okay, so can we just delete that folder? The mirror thing. If it's not in the record, no one needs to." Langston stepped back, as if the words physically offended him. "Ma'am," he said, more gently now, but with steel in his spine, "that would be obstruction. That folder is part of a forensic chain now. I've already logged and hashed its contents. Any tampering would be obvious and criminal." She didn't respond, just sat there, blinking slowly, hands trembling under the table. Then her laptop dinged. She didn't move. Another ding, louder this time, echoing in the too-quiet room. Langston watched her reach for the trackpad like it was a live wire. The notification preview flashed on screen. From Internal Compliance, SRG Advisors. Subject, Mandatory Review Request. You are requested to appear for internal review regarding irregularities identified during forensic audit. Please confirm receipt. She read it twice. The chair beneath her might as well have vanished. Her posture collapsed, not theatrically, not with a gasp, but like something internal had finally snapped. Her phone slid out of her hand and clattered to the floor. Langston said nothing. He gathered his laptop, his notes, and stood to leave. As he reached the door, he turned back once, just enough for his voice to reach her. "You know," he said, "when you brought me in, you really thought this was going to be your show." She didn't respond. He gave her one final look. Not pity, not cruelty, just cold, clear truth. "But you gave him the stage." And then he left. She stared at the screen, paralyzed, because it wasn't the files, or the audit, or even the million-dollar wire logs that ruined her. It was the silence after, the realization that none of this had been done to her. She had built the gallows. She had tied the rope, and all he ever did was wait. Wait for her to hit send.